The CEO waited on the rooftop, then said, "I've waited for you so long." The rooftop terrace should have been full of executives, but Amelia Bennett stood there alone, while the HVAC unit hummed like the building was keeping a secret. That sound was the first thing I noticed. Not the skyline, not the glass railing, not the expensive planters lined with clipped rosemary and decorative grass. The hum came from the industrial unit tucked behind the service wall, low and rhythmic, steady enough to make the empty terrace feel watched. Bennett Holdings did not do empty terraces on Tuesday afternoons. Senior directors used this space to take calls they did not want assistants to overhear. Junior partners came up here to rehearse promotions, resignations, and apologies. The executive floor had a habit of spilling its pressure upward whenever the building felt too polished to breathe. But today the slate tiles were clear. Except for her, Amelia stood near the far glass rail, wearing a black blazer over a high-neck cream blouse, one hand wrapped around a folded board audit notice, the other resting on the steel cap of the railing. The wind lifted the edge of the notice and snapped it once against her fingers. I had read her file before I ever saw her face. Amelia Bennett, 38, youngest CEO in the company's history, founder's daughter, though the board never used that phrase unless they wanted to make her sound inherited rather than earned, currently blamed for a systematic breach that had leaked proprietary restructuring plans to the press, frightened investors, and given the board exactly the liability excuse it needed to push her out. I had been hired 48 hours earlier to find the breach. I had spent those 48 hours tracing server weights, sealing external ports, and discovering that the supposed outside hack did not behave like any outside hack I had ever seen. Someone inside Bennett Holdings had walked the data out through a shadow credential. Someone with access. Someone with timing. Someone who knew that the board's no-confidence review was 6 weeks away. I stepped through the heavy glass doors. The latch clicked behind me. Amelia turned. She did not do the polished CEO smile. She did not ask whether I had found anything promising, which was what executives usually asked when they meant, "Tell me I am not about to lose everything." She simply looked at me across 20 feet of empty slate while the HVAC hum filled the space between us. "Caleb Parker," she said. Her voice carried cleanly over the vents. "My head of IT says you locked down the third-floor servers at 6 this morning." I secured the perimeter, I said. I stopped a respectful distance away, hands visible, tablet held flat at my side. People under corporate attack learn to read posture faster than language. "You secure the perimeter before you check the locks," I added. "Otherwise you are just organizing furniture while the front door is wide open." The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile. "And is my front door open, Mr. Parker?" "Not anymore." The wind flicked the audit notice again. But whoever walked out with the Q3 merger documents already had the keys. I said, "This was not an external hack. It was an internal extraction. Someone on your executive floor has a shadow credential." Amelia looked back toward the city. Below us, traffic crawled between glass towers and old brick warehouses. The whole city looked productive from this height. That was the lie skylines told. From above, nothing looked like panic. "The board meets in 6 weeks," she said. "If the leak source is not identified and permanently sealed, they invoke the liability clause. I lose the CEO seat. The company my father built goes into a controlled buyout. 300 entry-level jobs get liquidated before the press release cools." There were the stakes. Career, company, jobs, legacy. No vague sadness, no unclear crisis. A woman standing on a roof with a folded notice and a countdown. I nodded once. "I need the raw access logs." I said, "Not the sanitized logs it sent my firm. Raw server dumps from the basement mainframe, device telemetry from the executive floor, and the audit trail for every privileged credential created in the last 6 months. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You are asking to see everything." "I am asking to see movement, timestamps, data weight, login paths, access creation. I do not care about the contents of your emails unless the metadata tells me someone used them as a corridor." She studied me long enough that the HVAC hum seemed to slow. Trust was a heavy currency up here, and Amelia looked like every account had been drained. "If I authorize that," she said, "Marcus will know. Marcus Thorne, Vice President of Operations, Head of the Internal Inquiry, man whose office every breach report passed through before reaching the board, man who, according to the governance documents, could become interim CEO if Amelia was voted out for negligence." That did not prove he was guilty. It did make him useful to watch. "Then we make the authorization boring." I said, "Routine containment, no accusation, no drama. We preserve the perimeter before anyone knows which lock matters." She looked down at the notice in her hand. The paper had a crease down the center from where she had folded and unfolded it too many times. A tiny half-moon dent marked the top edge, the shape of a thumbnail pressed too hard. "Do it," she said. "Your approval has to be in person." "Then I will go downstairs with you." She moved before I could answer, clipping the audit notice back into a slim leather folder. No speech, no collapse, no asking me to save her. Just a decision. That was the second thing I respected. By Thursday, the executive floor had gone silent in a different way. Not empty. Worse. People were there, but every assistant lowered their voice when I passed. Every director watched my glass-walled conference room without watching it directly. The breach had turned the 41st floor into a chessboard, and most of the pieces were pretending they were furniture. I set up my mobile workstation in the conference room across from Amelia's office, 2 encrypted laptops, 1 portable server hub, a packet analyzer, a badge reader clone, 3 cables labeled by date because I had once spent 4 hours in a hospital network closet trying to identify a loose blue cable while a surgeon shouted through a speakerphone. I still labeled every cable. That was not paranoia. That was tuition. At 10 a.m. the elevator chimed. Marcus Thorne stepped out. He was tall, smooth, and perfectly dressed, the kind of executive whose suit looked less worn than deployed. He carried a leather folio in one hand and did not look toward my conference room. That made him either innocent or careful. He walked straight to Amelia's office. He did not knock. The door opened and he went in. I was already standing before it swung shut. Protocol mattered. So did consent. I crossed the hall and stopped at Amelia's open doorway. Marcus stood over her desk with a printed memo extended in one hand. Amelia sat behind the desk, posture rigid, both palms flat on the mahogany. "It is a standard audit protocol," Marcus was saying. "The board requested a full sweep of all executive devices, phone and laptop. IT will return them by 5. He reached toward the phone beside her keyboard. Amelia's fingers did not move, but the skin over her knuckles tightened. I looked at her, not Marcus. "Ms. Bennett," I said, "do you want me to enforce containment protocol?" Marcus turned his head slowly. Amelia looked up. For the first time since the rooftop, the weariness in her face sharpened into something harder. "Yes," she said, "enforce it." I stepped into the office and occupied the space between Marcus's hand and the phone. I did not touch him. I did not raise my voice. "Mr. Thorne," I said. He pulled his hand back a fraction. "Excuse me, this is a closed meeting." "Caleb Parker, external security consultant. Under the crisis containment protocol enacted yesterday, all executive device audits require supervised chain of custody through my firm." "I am the VP of operations," Marcus said. "I initiated this audit." "Then you know the protocol." His eyes moved from my face to the phone and back. I kept my hands loose at my sides. Corporate confrontations were not won by looking aggressive. They were won by making the wrong action look expensive. "If you want the CEO's hardware," I said, "file the request through my office. Until then, all devices remain in her possession. It protects the evidence trail. It protects the company. It protects you from any later claim that the audit contaminated the chain." Marcus's jaw tightened. Behind him, the office windows reflected the skyline in flat blue panels. "Fine," he said. "Expect the paperwork by noon." He looked past me at Amelia. "Do not stall this." Amelia leaned back in her chair by half an inch. I heard the first request, Marcus. He did not like that. He left without another word. I waited until the door clicked shut. Then I pulled a small RF scanner from my jacket and ran it along the edge of the desk, the conference speaker, the bookcase, and the vent grill. Amelia watched in silence. "You did not have to ask me first," she said. Yes, I did. The scanner chirped once near a wireless presentation adapter. I checked the signal, found nothing active, and moved on. "You are the client," I said. "Not the breach, not Marcus, not the board." Her hands were still on the desk, but the white pressure had gone from her knuckles. "He will come after you now. He already has my name." "That does not worry you?" "It means he knows where to send the paperwork." That got the smallest sound from her, not quite a laugh, more like an exhale that found a corner and survived there. I tapped my tablet and shifted the smart blinds. The slats hummed, angling to block the hallway's direct view while still leaving sunlight across her desk. Amelia looked at the blinds, then back at me. "Protective logistics," I said, "less dramatic than a sword, easier to expense." This time she did laugh. 1 second. Then she covered it with a breath and reached for the audit folder. But the room had changed. Not safe. Not yet. Just less exposed. For the next 2 weeks, the investigation moved from digital patterns into physical behavior. The shadow credential was clean enough to be impressive. Whoever created it had bounced logins through a VPN that terminated offshore, rotated authentication tokens, and wiped badge activity during the exact windows when the biggest transfers occurred. But data has weight. A fake identity still leaves pressure where it steps. The stolen files moved between midnight and 2 a.m., always from inside the building, always through a third-floor terminal that should have been locked after business hours. The electronic badge reader logs for those windows had been wiped, conveniently wiped, which meant the digital trail was compromised. The backup was a physical one, a handwritten loading dock sign-in ledger kept by night security in the basement. Nobody loved a handwritten ledger until all the elegant systems failed. At 11 p.m. on Friday, the executive floor was dark except for my conference room. The ledger lay open beneath a desk lamp, pages thick with coffee stains, rushed signatures, and the kind of handwriting produced by people who had not expected to become evidence. The HVAC hummed overhead. The glass door opened softly. Amelia stepped in wearing a dark charcoal cardigan over a buttoned blouse, her hair tied back with a pencil shoved through the knot like she had been interrupted mid-thought. She carried 2 ceramic mugs. "Priya told me you requisitioned the loading dock ledgers," she said. Priya Shah, head of IT, had been useful from the moment I convinced her that protecting Amelia's evidence was also protecting her own department from becoming Marcus's scapegoat. Amelia set 1 mug near my elbow. Black coffee. No sugar. I had never told her how I took it, but I had left 1 empty cup beside the break room trash 2 days earlier, and she had noticed. "The digital logs are compromised," I said. "I am cross-referencing physical entry times against server spikes." "Show me." I looked at the stack of ledgers. It is tedious. So is being framed. Fair. I slid the second stack toward her. "We are looking for recurring names that do not match payroll, vendor rosters, security passes, or cleaning schedules, maintenance, catering, courier, temporary facilities, anyone who appears near a server spike." She pulled a chair across from me. The chair leg scraped once against the floor, too loud in the sleeping building. For 3 hours, we worked. No dramatic music, no corporate monologue, just paper, timestamps, and the slow ache that forms between your shoulders when you read 4 months of bad handwriting under a lamp. Amelia did not complain. She used 3 different colors of sticky tabs without explaining the system, until I realized she had built one. Yellow for unknown names, blue for repeated vendor tags, red for entries that overlapped server spikes. I had consultants who charged double my rate and worked with half that clarity. Around 2 a.m., I glanced up. Amelia was tracing a line with the cap of a silver pen. Her thumbnail pressed into the pen clip until the metal left a mark. I had seen her do it during a call with the chairman, again when Marcus passed her office. A small, private pressure valve. I stood, adjusted the thermostat up 3 degrees, and moved the lamp so the glare stopped hitting her left eye. Then I poured a glass of room-temperature water from the conference credenza and set it beside her ledger, replacing her empty coffee mug without mentioning it. She looked at the water. "I am fine, Caleb. You are reading six-point pencil at 2 in the morning. Fine has left the building." She blinked. Then she took the water. "You always sound like that?" "Like what?" "Like a compliance memo with a pulse." I considered that. "It tests well in crisis rooms." The smallest smile touched her face. The ledger page between us fluttered as the ventilation shifted. Then her pen stopped. "Look at these dates," she said. She turned the book toward me. October 14th, October 28th, November 12th. Every date matched a large data exfiltration spike. Everyone included the same basement sign-in. J. Miller, maintenance. I opened the payroll directory. No J. Miller. Vendor maintenance roster. No J. Miller. Temporary facilities database. No J. Miller. Ghost employee. I said, a credential created to move through physical controls without tripping an executive badge alert. Operations controls vendor badges, Amelia said. Marcus controls operations. She did not say anything for a moment. The HVAC hum filled the room. A page lifted at the corner and settled again. "We have method," I said. "Timeline, access path, not attribution. If we go to the board now, Marcus calls it a rogue janitor." "Exactly." She capped the pen. "So we need him to use the credential again." I looked at her. She had skipped past fear and into strategy. That was the moment the case changed. Not because I wanted to protect her, because she became part of the trap. The next morning, the trap sprung before mine was built. I was in the server room when my encrypted phone vibrated against the edge of a rack. High priority alert, company-wide board distribution, subject line, CEO contingency exposure. I opened the attachment. Amelia's private contingency plan. Not a board deck, not a polished strategy, a local-only worst-case memo that detailed what departments would be liquidated if the merger failed, which executive redundancies would preserve entry-level jobs, and what severance packages could be protected under the worst financial conditions. It was brutal. It was also responsible. Marcus had made it look like cruelty. He had not just used the ghost credential to steal merger documents. He had breached her local machine and weaponized her private planning against her before she could define it herself. I locked the server rack, put the access card in my inner pocket, and took the stairs 2 at a time. I did not find her in her office. I found her on the rooftop. The sun was sinking behind the towers, turning the glass faces of the neighboring buildings bruised gold and blue. The HVAC unit hummed its patient rhythm behind the service wall. Cold air moved over the slate tiles. Amelia stood by the railing where she had stood on the first day. She wore the black blazer this time, but her hands gripped the metal rail hard enough that the folded audit notice bent in her fingers. I stopped beside, not behind her. "The board scheduled an emergency session for Friday," she said before I spoke. 48 hours. I saw the email. That memo was my worst-case preservation plan. It kept entry-level jobs alive by cutting executive overhead first, but stripped of context, it makes me look like a butcher. The wind caught the notice and snapped it flat. My hand tightened once on the cold railing. The HVAC kept humming behind us, steady and indifferent, and I kept both palms where she could see them. "Marcus is rushing the vote," I said. "That means he is worried." "I am worried too." Her voice did not break. The notice in her hand did. A clean tear split one corner. "I spent years building the discipline to run this company without asking anyone to soften the room for me," she said. "Marcus dismantled 3 months of work with a ghost credential and a stolen draft. He did not dismantle you." She turned her head. I heard how that sounded after I said it. Too neat, too close to comfort. So I did what I trusted. I made it operational. "He breached a local endpoint," I said. "He used a shadow credential. He exposed a file without its chain of context. We do not answer that with outrage. We answer with proof." Her grip loosened slightly. "What proof?" "A bait file." She looked at me fully now. The tactician returned behind her eyes. "Something irresistible?" Something damaging enough that he will steal it before the board meeting. We embed a tracking beacon, watermark the file, and bind it to a fake local-only draft. The second it moves, we get the ghost credential, the transfer path, and the receiving machine. If he doesn't take it, then he has more discipline than he has shown so far. The torn corner of the notice fluttered against her sleeve. Amelia looked out over the city. Then she folded the damaged notice and put it away. I write the bait file, she said. Yes. I decide what risk I take. Yes. And you do not soften it for me. No. She nodded. Then let's build the front door he thinks is open. We went downstairs. She went to her office to draft the bait memo. I went to the server room to build the beacon. The file had to look real, not melodramatic, not obviously planted. Marcus was not stupid. He would recognize bait if it smelled like a trap. So Amelia wrote what a CEO would truly write under pressure: a controlled emergency plan to halt the merger, freeze executive bonuses, and recommend a forensic audit of operations. It was a document Marcus would hate. That made it useful. At 1:40 p.m., she walked into the server room with the draft on an encrypted drive. Server rooms are not built for romance. They are built for thermal discipline and ugly carpeting. The air was too cold. The rack lights blinked in rows, and the emergency battery unit clicked every 9 seconds in a way that had annoyed me for 2 straight nights. Amelia handed me the drive. I added one line suggesting operations may have created the shadow credential. She said, "If Marcus sees it, he will move." That line is accurate. It is also bait. Both can be true. She leaned against the work table, exhaustion finally visible in the tilt of her shoulders. The soft, rhythmic fan noise of the racks blended with the rooftop HVAC echo traveling through the building's ventilation shaft. Same hum, deeper down. I inserted the drive into the air-gapped workstation. Watermark first, I said, then beacon, then false local path. Show me. You have been awake for 22 hours. So have you. I am built from poor sleep and expensive coffee. I am CEO of a company under attack. I can learn one more terrible thing. I looked at her. She meant it. So I showed her. I walked her through the watermark, the telemetry path, the decoy directory, the false local signature, and the server listener that would record the MAC address of any receiving machine. She asked precise questions, not decorative ones, good questions. At 2:36, she caught an error in my folder naming convention. You named the decoy folder Strategic Transition. Marcus prefers continuity in his internal memos. I stared at the screen. She was right. I renamed the folder. That would have bothered me forever. I said, "What, being wrong?" "No, being caught being wrong." Her tired laugh slipped between the server racks. For 1 second, the room felt less cold. At 3:05, the bait file went live on Amelia's local drive. At 3:11, I armed the listener. At 3:13, she said, "Now what?" "Now we wait for the man who thinks he owns the keys." I walked her back to her office. She insisted she was going to review notes for the board. 10 minutes later, when I passed the open doorway, she was asleep at her desk with one cheek against her folded arms, the black blazer draped over the back of her chair, and the silver pen still in her hand. I did not wake her. I stepped inside, turned off the harsh overhead fluorescent lights, and switched on the small amber desk lamp. Then I placed a paper cup of water near her elbow, closed the door softly, and went back to the server room. At 2:14 p.m. Friday, the alert fired. The bait file moved. The beacon lit my screen. Credential, J. Miller. Source path, CEO local drive. Transfer method, masked local session. Destination, laptop MAC address E47C913A02FD. I checked the company device inventory. The laptop sat registered under a hardware asset tag assigned to Marcus Thorne. The machine currently connected from inside his leather folio through a private hotspot. He had taken the bait before the board meeting. People who think they own the building often forget that buildings keep receipts. By 6 a.m., the dossier was printed, bound, signed, and sealed with a third-party verification statement from Priya's emergency vendor contact. Priya herself reviewed the raw logs twice, then looked at me over the server console with bloodshot eyes. If he says this is fabricated, I will personally throw this laptop inventory report at him. Please do not throw evidence. It would be a copy. Still frowned upon. She nodded once toward the bound file. For what it is worth. Parker, you were right to force raw logs. It would have been blamed by noon. You preserved the dumps. You made me stop trusting the cleaned reports. That is the same thing in different shoes. She smiled despite herself. There was the third-party acknowledgement I trusted most. Not praise from executives. Relief from the person who knew exactly how close the trap had come to catching her department instead. The boardroom at 9 looked like a courtroom designed by an architect who wanted everyone to feel expensive and guilty. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table. The chairman, Everett Sloan, occupied the center seat. Marcus sat to his right with his leather folio closed in front of him, hands resting lightly on top. Amelia stood at the head of the room in a navy suit, posture immaculate, folder in front of her. I stood near the wall by the door. Present. Quiet. A perimeter with a pulse. Everett opened the session. The motion before the board is a vote of no confidence regarding the CEO's handling of proprietary data, exposure of restructuring plans, and the concerning contents of the contingency document circulated Wednesday. Marcus lowered his eyes in practiced reluctance. It brings me no satisfaction, he said, which meant it brought him considerable satisfaction, but the shareholders need stability. Amelia's inability to secure company data has become a catastrophic leadership failure. Amelia looked directly at him. Data security is paramount, Marcus. Her voice carried across the boardroom. That is why I initiated an external forensic audit 3 weeks ago. The audit concluded at 6 o'clock this morning. She did not look back. She did not need to. I stepped forward and placed the bound dossier on the table. My name is Caleb Parker. I said, lead security architect for the external containment review. This dossier contains verified chain of custody, raw access logs, physical ledger correlations, device inventory, and a third-party validation statement. Everett pulled the file toward him. Marcus did not move. At 2:14 today, I continued, a classified decoy file was exfiltrated from the CEO's local drive using a ghost credential named J. Miller. The file contained an embedded watermark and a routing beacon. It bypassed the external firewall because the transfer originated inside the building. It landed on a local machine with a MAC address assigned to the laptop currently registered to the VP of Operations. The HVAC vent above the boardroom whispered steadily. Marcus's fingers flattened against the leather folio. This is an outrageous fabrication, he said. A desperate setup by a CEO facing removal and a contractor trying to justify his fee. Priya stood from the side bench before I could answer. That was not planned. Good evidence has a way of giving people courage. I validated the raw logs, she said. I also preserved the server dumps before operations requested the cleaned reports. The wiped badge windows match the J. Miller physical sign-ins. My department did not create that ghost credential. Marcus turned on her. Priya, sit down. Amelia spoke first. No? One word. It cut through the room cleaner than any accusation. She placed both palms on the table. Ms. Shah will finish. Priya's chin lifted. The vendor badge creation path runs through operations admin, she said. The credential was created under a service account attached to Mr. Thorne's department, then hidden under a maintenance label. Everett opened the dossier. His eyes moved down the first page, then the second. Mr. Thorne, he said, open the folio. Marcus looked around the table. No one saved him. He opened it. The laptop inside bore the asset sticker listed in the dossier. Everett closed the file. Security, Amelia said. The boardroom door opened. Building security entered, led by Leo from Night Shift, whose basement ledger had just become the most important book in the building. Amelia looked at Marcus. Your access has been deactivated. Corporate counsel filed preservation notices with your office, your devices, and your department's vendor accounts. You will be escorted to collect personal effects under supervision. The company will pursue civil remedies after counsel completes the theft review. Marcus stood slowly. You think this saves you? Amelia did not raise her voice. No, Marcus. The evidence saves the company. I intend to keep leading it. For the first time that morning, the room moved with her instead of against her. Everett nodded to security. Marcus left with Leo at one side and a council representative at the other. The door closed. The HVAC kept humming. Not dramatic, not triumphant. Just steady. That was how good systems sounded when they finally worked. 4 hours later, the emergency session ended. The no-confidence motion died without a second. Marcus was suspended pending civil filing and law enforcement review. Priya's department was formally cleared of negligent breach. The board approved an independent security restructuring plan with external oversight, so no executive could ever again create a credential without cross-approval. Amelia retained the CEO seat. The PR statement used careful language. The internal memo used better language. The company used a sentence I had not expected. The CEO's original contingency planning preserved entry-level jobs and exposed executive manipulation. That mattered to her. I saw it in the way she read the memo alone in her office, with the torn audit notice from the Rooftop folded beside her keyboard. She touched the crease once, then let it go. My contract was fulfilled. I began packing the temporary office before sunset. Power cords first, server hub, packet analyzer, badge reader, 3 labeled cables, because I had learned my lessons the expensive way. Amelia appeared in the doorway holding nothing in her hands. That was new. No audit notice. No folder. No crisis. The board wants to retain you, she said. I received the formal email from Risk Committee. Good. It reports through committee, not the CEO. I insisted on that. I looked up. She leaned one shoulder lightly against the doorframe, tired but not collapsing. It matters, she said. I did not want a job offer to sound like a leash. The words landed exactly where they needed to. On the clean boundary, on the thing we both knew and neither had said. I set the cable in the case. The proposed title is Chief Information Security Officer. Board appointed, compliance reviewed, 6-month probation, direct report to the Risk Committee, compensation set by HR benchmark. Not me. You read the whole letter. I helped write the guardrails. That made me pause. The old instinct in me looked for the hidden cost, the hook, the clause that turned trust into a transaction. I had spent my career finding doors people pretended were walls. There was no hidden door here, just a boundary she had built before asking me to step near it. I have to consider it, I said. I know. She placed a black-tier executive access badge on the desk. It had my name printed on it. Caleb Parker. Temporary security access had been replaced by board security access. The corner of the plastic was slightly bent, like someone had held it too tightly before setting it down. This is not an answer you owe me, she said. It is access you earned. Then she left before I could confuse gratitude with anything else. 6 weeks later, the Rooftop was full again. Not crowded, not loud, but alive in the normal executive way. 2 junior partners argued softly near the planners. Someone from legal took a call by the South Rail. Priya stood near the door with a paper cup of coffee, explaining to a director that multi-factor authentication is not a decorative preference. I had accepted the CISO role after 3 rounds with HR, 2 compliance reviews, 1 risk committee session, and a conflict of interest disclosure so detailed it asked whether I had any prior personal relationship with the CEO, her family, or any entity controlled by them. The answer had been no. By then, Marcus's civil case had begun. His access network had been mapped, the J. Miller credential fully documented, and 2 outside vendors had confirmed they were pressured by operations staff to ignore unusual badge requests. The board review was closed. Amelia's seat was secure. The crisis no longer needed me to stand between her and the room. That was why I almost did not go to the Rooftop when her assistant sent the message. Ms. Bennett requests 5 minutes at the terrace, no documents. No documents was the part that convinced me. I found her near the glass rail, where the HVAC hum wrapped the terrace in its low, familiar rhythm. She wore a black blazer over a high-neck cream blouse, but the folder was gone, the audit notice was gone. Her hands rested empty on the steel cap of the railing. She turned as the door clicked behind me. For a moment, the first day repeated itself. Then it changed. I waited until there was no contract between us, she said. There is a contract. Not one I control. True. And no emergency vote. No. No board crisis. No. No reason for you to say yes except wanting to. The HVAC hummed behind her. The city moved below us in glass and headlights. My badge rested in my jacket pocket, heavy and square, not a favor, but a roll with rails around it. Amelia stepped beside the railing, close enough to speak softly, far enough that neither of us had to pretend this was still protocol. I have waited for you so long, she said. The line did not feel like a confession thrown from desperation. It felt like a door opened after the alarms had stopped. I looked at her hands on the railing, then at the skyline, then at the terrace door behind us, unlocked and clear. You waited 6 weeks, I said. I waited 38 years to trust someone who did not try to turn access into control. That caught me without giving me anywhere to hide. My thumb brushed the edge of my badge inside my pocket. The plastic corner was still slightly bent. Amelia, if this makes your role impossible, we stop here, she said. I mean that. We keep the company clean first. There it was again. Choice before closeness. Boundary before comfort. The perimeter before the locks. I set my hand on the railing, palm up, not touching hers. She looked at it for a breath. Then she placed her hand over mine. No rush. No audience. No leverage. Her fingers were steady. The HVAC hum, once the sound of an empty roof and a hidden breach, became something else behind us. A system still running. A building holding. A perimeter secure enough for someone to finally check the locks. 3 months after that, winter frost settled over the city. The executive floor was quiet on a Friday evening. I was in the CISO suite, finishing the final code review for the Q1 security patch while Priya sent me increasingly aggressive calendar invites titled, Go Home, Parker. My office door was open. Amelia appeared with a wool coat over one arm and a leather weekender bag in the other. She did not knock. She stopped at the threshold. I am respecting the perimeter, she said. You are standing in the hallway. Exactly. I looked at the security dashboard, saved the review notes, and closed the laptop. That dashboard still has 3 medium-risk alerts. Priya said if you mention them, I should tell you she has already assigned them to the night team. That sounds like Priya. She also said, and I quote, if he tries to steal his keyboard, my keyboard is company property. I am the CEO. You do not report into risk committee. She smiled. There was warmth in it now without exhaustion standing behind it. Then she held out a physical brass key. The cabin upstate, she said. The snow starts by midnight. We should leave before the road's ice. I looked at the key. It was not a digital fob, not a badge, not conditional access. A permanent cut of brass, simple and old-fashioned, resting against her palm. The locks were changed after the renovation, she said. Risk committee does not need to approve who gets a cabin key. Probably not. HR definitely does not. Debatable. Her smile deepened. I stood and walked around the desk. The building ventilation hummed softly through the quiet halls. The same low rhythm from the rooftop on the day we met. Back then, it had sounded like a secret moving through the walls. Now it sounded like infrastructure. Something steady enough to forget until you needed to know it was still there. I took the key. The brass was cold, and for once I did not look for the nearest exit. I saved the last server report, put the black tier badge in the drawer, and locked the office door behind us. As we walked toward the elevator, Amelia slipped her hand into mine. Not a rescue. Not an access request. A choice. The key rested in my pocket. The HVAC hummed above us. The perimeter was secure. For the first time in my life, I was not building walls so I could stay outside them. I was learning how to come home. The end.